Around 7 or 8 p.m. when the kids are asleep, I
Mhm.
just want to sit. I have so much stuff to do. How can I be more productive? So you've been up since 6 a.m. You are now 14 hours into your day, and
Yeah.
you're expecting to still be running on 100% at 8 p.m.
It feels like you're the one that's doing it wrong because it's upstream.
The reality is, I think we live in a time where it's busy when you have small kids and so caught up in what's going on in the here and now.
If something is not said, there should be no assumption behind the unsaid word.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Happy and Human podcast. I am your co-host, Dr. Seema and I am here with some amazing people, one of which you already know. I'm here with my co-host, Dinesh Malwani. Dinesh, how are you?
Hey, Seema, I am doing great. It is Saturday. We're back to our regular Saturday morning recording time. Life is good. Everything feels right.
Yes, feels good to kind of be back to the familiar, huh?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, so today we have another guest host on here. Who do we have, Dinesh?
We have someone that I have been admiring from afar. And the thing I admire most about her is just her energy, her sheer will to positivity and joy that she brings. And she does all of it like fascinatingly from such an authentic place. Like, this is a woman whose bravery has impressed me over and over. And literally, I found her on Instagram, and it's such a treat to welcome to the Happy and Human podcast, Dr. Flora Sinha. Hey, Flo, how are you?
Hi, good. I'm so excited to be here.
We are too. This is a treat for us. We're really excited. We've got some great conversations, and this is probably the first time where our conversation is a bit interactive because the people at large, our beautiful and lovely audience, have sent in some questions this time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. I was waiting for the day this would happen. Listeners, thank you so much. We're really excited about that.
We are excited.
Yeah. So Flo, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself before we get to the really, really good stuff?
Absolutely. So I wear multiple hats here. So I am a internal medicine physician. I am a mindset coach. I am a mom, a wife, also married to medicine. I am also an IVF warrior. So a lot of my journey actually started from infertility. I have secondary infertility. And that journey really pushed me into changing my mindset, changing myself. I am not the same person I was
Mhm.
5+ years ago. And changing my mindset, changing how I think about things, my perspective, my attitude, drove me into really reevaluating my life and prioritizing, whether that be myself, my daughter, my husband, my patients, and just mental clarity is what it brought.
Mhm.
So very recently, a year ago, I started my own coaching business while practicing medicine. Medicine is my first passion, and it will always be my first passion. However, lately I started experiencing burnout, which I know many of us have gone through, including me.
Yes.
But this burnout was a little different. And so I decided to take a small step back and take a break from all things medicine
Wow.
and really concentrate on business building and my own goals. And it's been scary and exciting and fulfilling all at the same time.
Hmm.
So proud of you. Oh, Dinesh, I did not mean to
Thank
cut
you.
you off.
Yeah, no, lots of things there I want to jump into. Then I realized in my head it would be so disjointed. So we'll just pick one. Um, so burnout. Let's talk about burnout, right? And we're going to jump right in a little bit here. Uh, what we hear this term, and I think burnout is one of those terms that I think we all kind of know, but we don't really know what it is. So maybe you could shed the light on what is burnout? How do you know that you're in burnout? And how would someone go about addressing it? Because what I picked up on is that you're burnt out and you're stepping away from medicine, but your face lit up when you're talking about building this business. right? And in my head, I'm like, well, if I'm burnt out, all I want to do is eat Cheetos and lay on the sofa and say, like, woe is me, like, world, leave me alone. But that's not you. So help us
No,
understand a little bit more. So, because I think this affects a lot of professions and how we can
absolutely.
pull ourselves out of it.
Burnout is such a big buzzword.
Right.
And this is something that I explain to my patients and to my clients that when we refer to burnout, we're not referring to a temporary dissatisfaction. Life has obstacles, life has challenges. There's always going to be ups and downs. That should be the norm expectation. True burnout is a syndrome of symptoms and signs where
Mm.
you may be feeling not only down about a certain aspect of your life. So in this case, let's just use our job as an example, but almost a sense of dread going
Mm-hmm.
back. Negativity, so pessimism. We all kind of have our huge range of like whether we're realistic or optimistic or pessimistic, but true pessimism, where no matter what you do to battle your burnout and your negativity, that pessimism still kind of overcomes all of that.
Mm.
You start noticing almost a little bit of apathy, like you just
Mm-hmm.
don't care, which is
Yeah.
probably the worst thing as anyone in the service
Yeah.
industry, especially in
Right.
medicine. And there's so many signs and symptoms that go within burnout for a certain period of time that's consistent, persistent. And it really varies from person to person, but those are just a few examples of things to look out for. Now, given that burnout is so subjective,
Mm.
um, I think it's important to have your own tools and techniques ready to go when you are recognizing your own signs of burnout. So
Hmm.
I'm going to use myself as an example. I did recognize those signs of burnout. It was just, I wasn't as happy going back to work. I was feeling not content. I was at a point where I was very apathetic. Like,
Mm.
and that's just not me as a physician. That's not me as a person, but that's not me as a physician. I literally give a little bit of myself to every one of my patients, regardless. And I've noticed that I was less empathetic, less compassionate. First of all, nobody wants that in their medical
Yeah.
professional, but two,
No.
I started recognizing that. So, I kind of went back to my tools and techniques, like what is going on? What are my external stressors? What am I overwhelmed by? Is it my inbox? Is it the number of patients? Is it a lack of consistent help? Is it home life? I went through everything and realized I have it all. I have everything in place, and everything and everyone was fulfilling what I expected them to do
Mm.
to make sure my life runs smoothly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I started thinking about, is it the job? I have been with the same company since graduating residency. It's almost been 10 years.
Mm.
Is it that? So I thought a little bit outside of the box, started looking at other positions, just kind of putting some feelers out, and realized it's the structure. We can't change the structure of medicine, and it's so complex, right?
Mm.
Insurance
Mm.
companies and billing and just the infrastructure of clinical medicine is broken.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
I'm sure you relate as well, Seema. And it's hard to expect so much from both patients and medical professionals
Right.
in a broken system.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what made me decide what I needed to do next.
Mhm.
So you said a bunch of really interesting things there, and I'm sure we'll get to all of them. But since the last thing you said was about the system being broken, I the question I get a lot, especially when I am facilitating workshops and coaching physician leadership, what the hospitals want is less attrition, right? They want to, and it's what I hear a lot is, yes, the system's broken. And to your point with burnout, we fall to apathy and say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And so now you have this almost liminal space of like, you don't want to necessarily facilitate a mass exodus of quality providers. The system, yes, is broken. So how do we say the system is broken and I also have immense power to influence at least my own experience within medicine, and then take the ease and abundance that I create from that experience and then start to shift for what the system looks like and feels like outside of me. So I know I said a lot, but I'm just sort of more highlighting that there is a component of that going on as well, right? Just because you leave doesn't mean you're leaving forever either.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what you just said, Simo, is so powerful that it's the and, right? The growth mindset includes the word and no matter what. So yes, we can't change certain circumstances and we can change how we approach it. We can change what boundaries we put. So that this is something I recognize probably around my infertility journey. I was working full time plus doing the IVF treatment, which is a whole second job, plus had a toddler at home, plus had a husband in fellowship. I mean, it was a nutty time. And I recognized at that time that, yes, I can't change my circumstance. I can't change my diagnosis. I can't change the fact that I have 30 patients lined up for today, but I can put up boundaries. So I can't change the broken system that we're referring to, but I can change the boundaries that I put up with my patients, with my schedule, with my staff, with myself, really letting go of that guilt of, oh, I can't squeeze in my 31st patient into, which is a lot in primary care, and really just setting priorities straight and acknowledging my present and recognizing my bandwidth. And that kept me going with sheer fulfillment and really bringing me back to why I got into medicine in the first place, concentrating and connecting with patients and teaching them and counseling them and treating disease in a holistic view. But lately, I think when I launched my coaching business, I realized, and it's scary to think of this given that I was living, breathing medicine for 20 years. I've been working towards this for so long, but I realized that, oh, you know what? There's something else that's filling my cup right now. And I could still do both, but I may just have to shift what my priorities will be or may be now.
Yeah. So a lot of our audience is South Asian and a lot of high performing, ambitious professionals. And I don't know if I'm sharing this from the South Asian, sort of Indian lens or a male lens or both, right? And I have a feeling it's both. So it impacts a lot of people. The predominant response, at least to me, is when the going gets tough, right? The tough gets going. And as even I feel like if I were just to look at from a South Asian perspective, it's like, buck up, right? Power through, put your head down, work harder. And there's no time for sort of thinking that you could take a break now, right? And I think this is true for whether it's a profession or parenting or anything like that. And I find it so fascinating. I think you're 100% right, but I think that there's a lot of bravery back there to look inwards, find out that this is the source, and then go and implement solutions, as opposed to just thinking that the answer is to just work harder. There's something wrong with me, and I need to figure this out on my own. And in fact, I was even talking to a couple of people this morning, and someone asked me like, okay, so when are we retiring? Because I can't do this any longer, right? And it's just so hard to step away. Talk to us about that. Talk to us about the soul searching, the tools that you use, where does the bravery come from? And that it's going to lead you to a better place rather than just pushing through, which I feel is not good for anyone involved, not even the patients, right? Not even your family.
Absolutely. I'm going to again refer back to my infertility journey where I think I use that mantra of you got it, you will figure this out. You're strong. None of that's untrue, but my action from that mindset was see more patients, do more, be there for your toddler, do all the stuff IVF, like go full throttle on every aspect of your life until it broke me. I
Yeah.
Yeah.
mean, literally, I had to take a medical leave of absence from pregnancy losses and other medical issues that were going on at that time. But it really gave me some time to self reflect and think back and say to myself, what am I doing? I had some precious moments that I didn't take advantage of with my daughter, who
Yeah.
was 4 at the time.
Hmm.
I have a husband also going through his own journey of through infertility as a partner and as someone in training. And I I am that person to be there for him, yet I was so consumed
Hmm.
by doing more because that is the only solution that I knew of.
Yeah.
That was the first time where I was forced to take a break,
Mm.
and I just happened to recognize that that is not the only solution. That was probably the worst solution for me at that time. And look, I think there are times where, yes, working harder, learning as much as possible, there's a time and place for that mindset. But to be on that mindset 100% of the time and running on all cylinders 100% of the time, that's not
Yeah.
realistic. And you
Yeah.
are eventually going to hit some sort of burnout or some sort of rock bottom.
Right. Yeah. And I think you're right. There's a time to give 150%. But for all of us, there's a shift in our mindset where, like, I almost feel like the progress stops, and the answer isn't to push harder, but to take a step back and
Mhm.
reevaluate the direction you're going. And, it's interesting you mentioned about secondary infertility. I'm not sure if you listened to one of our podcasts with my wife. We went through that as well.
Mhm.
First of all, I think secondary infertility, the name implies it's somehow less than primary
Yeah.
infertility. But what you mentioned with Gia is, I saw that firsthand with my wife. It's this immense guilt of not only trying to have a baby, but this immense guilt that you're neglecting the blessing that you already have been given in
Mhm.
search for something. And you start to question about whether you're sort of going after like a fool's errand, right? Like, why am
Mhm.
I not thankful for what I have, and why do I want more? So, and I can agree with you with the break. Our break came in the form of a global pandemic. It forced my wife out of the hospital because of everything that was going on, and the world shut down. And I have to tell you, I think that's why we got pregnant. I think,
Yeah.
Sanvi was born in April 2021, and if you do the math, right, 9 months
Yeah.
going back, 6 months after the world shut down,
Yeah.
Right?
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really a testament. So I always say rest is productive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stopping and taking a break is productive.
Mhm.
That equals forward momentum. And we're not taught that, whether it's societal or cultural. It has been ingrained to us that you need to keep going. That immigrant mindset where
Yeah.
their priorities were much different, right?
Right.
Putting food on the table and providing shelter for their family. We're in
Right.
a blessed, privileged space where we have the ability to self-reflect and to rest to a certain extent, and shift and figure out what the next best steps are. So yeah, it rest is okay. There's
Yeah.
still forward momentum.
It's
Absolutely.
interesting because before we hit record, we were talking about how Flo and I both do not enjoy putting gas in our cars. But
Yep.
the car needs gas, right? And you can't keep driving the car. You're going to need to pull over. You're going to need to fill it with gas or charge your battery if you have an electric car. It can't keep going unless you make that time and space to charge. And it's no different for real life. It's such, it is necessary to have that explosive growth. If that pause is critical.
I think it's also important to just build in rest.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we wait till our body or our mind or just there's a sign, an external sign to rest, but build it in, prevent it before you hit your end point.
Yeah. You're not
Yeah.
lazy for going to bed early or,
Absolutely not.
deciding you don't want to go meet up with that set of friends that you said you would meet up with, or
Yeah.
like, it's okay. Just,
That takes
here,
strength and vulnerability.
absolutely. No, not right now.
Mhm.
Um, I need space, I need rest,
Mhm.
those are all completely okay.
Absolutely. And I think, as many of us think that we're superheroes and we could break the laws of the world and the universe, the law of diminishing returns is something that I experience, because you can only go for so many hours at a time. And if you insist on doing, high value work when you're off your peak, you're actually going to be setting yourself back, because that energy, low awakeness, distracted mindset could be used for something else that requires a lower amount of cognitive bandwidth. Paying your
Mhm.
bills, for example, you go on, you pay them online. But if you insist on pushing yourself, you're going to be wasting that time. The task is going to remain, and the stuff that you're hoping to get done is not going to get done. And I think that's one of the things I try to preach, is that try to line up your energy state with where
Mhm.
you're at. And when the energy is
Mhm.
going down, switch to something else so that you can holistically be productive.
Absolutely agree. I cannot tell you, I think probably every one of my coaching clients, maybe except one, all of them say at one point in time during one of our coaching sessions that, around 7 or 8 p.m. when the kids are asleep, I
Hmm.
just want to sit, but I have so much stuff to do. How can I be more productive? And I look at them and say, so you've been up since 6 a.m. You are now 14 hours into your day, and
Yeah.
you're expecting to still be running on 100% at 8 p.m.
Right.
Make that make sense to me. And they kind of, they're, when someone else tells it to you from an
Right.
objective standpoint, you're just like, yeah, that's it. This, again, whether it's societal or cultural
Yeah.
expectation for not only women, for all of us to be
Hmm.
productive 100% of the time. I love that you had mentioned aligning your energy state. I think, again, prior to recording, we were talking about, our productivity time is my productivity time is in the morning.
Yeah.
And after 1 p.m., I start slowing down, and I will schedule things appropriately in the afternoon.
Right.
And between this time, like this is the time where I'll start recording podcast or write or create or do
Yeah.
patient care, versus at 6 p.m. That's my wind down time. 6 p.m. dinner, bedtime routine, hang out with the family, sleep. That's a productive day right there.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of changing definitions, and Seema just heard me say this like 2 days ago. Um, if you line up the the right thing for your right energy state, what I've found is that you can be productive in different spheres of your life. Let me take a step back. What a lot of people would say is like 6, 7 o'clock when you're low on energy, like you're not giving your best to your family. You're not giving your best to the things out there. But I actually found that if I line up the right things at that time, I am giving a portion of myself at its best, right? So last night we came home. It's a Friday. We all worked, and we watched. The kids took showers, bath. We had dinner, all that stuff, and we watched Cars 2, right? And my daughter Sanvi is 2 years old, and she sat on my chest. And we watched Cars 2 for 20 minutes. And yeah, we were all tired and we wanted to go to bed and we're watching this movie. But I felt that was productive. Like I got to, spend
Mhm.
some, we talk about newborn babies having skin contact and things like that. And I think as human beings, touch is very important for us. It gives us a sense of belonging. But she literally sat on my chest for 20 minutes. And I felt that was productive in our relationship, in just our closeness. And it didn't require me to be at my absolute cognitive, energetic best. Right.
Yes, I think our needs change when it comes to our family and vice
Yeah.
versa. Kids just want quality time. They don't want
Mhm.
you distracted. My daughter can absolutely recognize, I may not even have my phone in front of me, and she
Yeah.
can say, Mommy, what are you thinking about? I'm like, she caught me. She caught
Mhm.
me
Yeah.
not being 100% involved with her. And,
Yeah.
I explain that you're absolutely right. I am now 100% here with you. And
Mm.
it's just fascinating what our kids want from us. It's truly not that much.
Yeah. It's
So good.
not the things, right? Like I think a lot of us get caught in I need the house, I need the car, I need the fancy vacations and the Louis Vuitton bags and the, all of this stuff in order to prove something, whether we're conscious of it or not, right? But specifically around the kids, like, do they have the latest video games? Do they have, I don't know, there's all sorts of stuff that these kids come home with asking for. And time again, what Manish and I have landed on is finding that line of, we don't want to ostracize you by you being the only one that doesn't have this video game, and
Right.
not relating to the fact that that's the norm for you.
Yeah.
At the same time, like Dinesh and I, we were in Italy, and we don't ever buy souvenirs unless it's very rarely that we actually engage in that. We spend our money on experiences. And when we came back, all they can talk about now is like, do you remember we made pizza with Sanvi and Jay in? And do you remember we, this and we that? Versus when we went to Disneyland and I bought my daughter this bubble thing.
Oh my God, that bubble thing gets everyone every time.
I was so mad.
So
I was
bad.
like, this is $30 for this piece of plastic that's going to hate the earth, and she's going to use it for a hot 2 seconds.
I know.
But, I remember being 9 and totally in love with The Little Mermaid. And so it was just like, but it's one of those things, right, where it just is a good reminder that they crave, deserve, and need our whole attention, our pure, unjustified, non-judgmental focus, rather than the stuff that's going to distract them temporarily and then make them feel like, you're not hearing me. I want you,
Absolutely. I have a confession. Every parent or every expert will tell you, like, when you travel, don't buy your kids stuff because they'll get used to it, right? And I know that academically and intellectually. And I travel a lot. And every time I travel, I try to buy my daughter a dress. There's an outlet near my parents' house. I buy her something for like a cute dress. And if I'm going to buy my daughter something, I got to buy my son something, right?
Naturally.
And I know it's setting that expectation that they're going to expect that every time daddy comes home. Get out of the way, daddy. I want to see what you got me. But here's how my lawyer coach brain has justified it. My wife once told me that her dad traveled a lot, that whenever her dad came back from like Dubai or India, he would bring her a dress. And I have justified it that if my daughter turns out to be half the woman my wife is, I would be extremely proud. So I got to do the same things her dad did. And if he bought her a dress, screw the expectations. I'm going to buy her a dress.
That's very sweet, by the way.
That's totally not the same as, let me distract you from your pain with a shiny new video game.
I know, but some of it is coming from guilt, right? Some of it is coming from guilt. Like, let me buy them something. But this is how, like, I have justified it in my head. And that's for another episode. You guys, Seema, you could talk me out of it.
No, it just reminds me of, so when I grew up in Wichita Falls, Texas. It's like in the middle geographically of nowhere, but there wasn't a lot to do growing up, and the one thing was the mall. And I remember growing up, and my parents would, on the weekends, we would go to the mall, and there was these things called cookie cups.
Oh, wow.
And they were like chocolate chip cookies in a muff, like they're baked in a muffin, and then you have the icing on top. But it was like,
sounds amazing.
It sounds amazing, and you can totally afford to do that when you're 8, right? And the dentist in me is like, "What are you doing? That's awful." But,
I was just gonna say, how are your teeth?
I have. That's another story. I've got great teeth. It's great teeth and great genetics, so I am cavity free. I've never had a cavity, but anyway. But my point is, one of the fondest memories I have is of my dad. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't go on fancy vacations. I didn't have the things, but I remember those cookie cups, and they were, they're special. And so I think that just sort of recognizing, for our listeners, as you each have your own, we all have our own things going on, just kind of recognize, what are those special childhood memories that that make you who you are, and how can you infuse that into your day with your children now, the way Dinesh does with his, I'm actually curious, Flo, what are some like special things you do for your family?
We're all about experiences. So we are blessed to live in SoCal. So we frequent Disney quite a bit. We have passes and we're huge Disney fans. And the very first time we decided to go to Disneyland, my husband and I had an agreement. Nothing, like no Disney paraphernalia. There will be
Right.
plenty. We are already financially budgeting a lot towards the parks and everything that goes along with it. We just want to have the experience with our daughter growing up, going to Disney. It's something that we loved as kids and have strong memories attached to that. We also fell prey to the bubble machine, and it it was the very first thing we bought in the park for our daughters. This is a number of years ago. And it was out of guilt. It was out of, we've never bought Gia. Gia's a blessed kid. She has everything in the world. We've never bought, that inner critic on ours. I do have to say though, she doesn't remember the bubble machine, which broke 2 seconds later after we came home. Yeah. But she remembers the fact that we took the time and effort to think about the purchase. So Dinesh, kind of going back to you getting your kids gifts when you travel, they may not remember the actual physical gift, but they will remember that, hey, daddy thought of me every time he was out of town. And I think the meaning behind that is what we need to teach our kids. Not, yes, what's the next best thing? Or after, you have this temporary high from a materialistic object, let's go look for your next high from another materialistic object. But the meaning behind it. And so we all live in a materialistic world, and I understand that. And Seema, to your point, we don't want our kids to feel left out. We want them to be able to relate to their friends in whatever, current pop culture entails. But again, teaching them the meaning behind it. And that's what we do with Gia. And the act of receiving and giving and having equal importance and equal weight in both. So look, it was just recently my child's birthday, and I told her, we have a limited amount of space for your stuff. Mm-hmm. And if you are going to be receiving, you need to give. So probably twice a year around Christmas time, around her birthday, we get out a big old garbage bag, and what things don't bring you joy anymore? What things, there's memories attached to stuff, there is experience attached to stuff, but are you really using that baby doll from 6 years ago that's sitting in the corner that looks like Weird Barbie? Probably not. Yeah. I don't know if you guys all watched the
Weird Barbie was Weird Barbie. And I know we're not supposed to label people, but the character, so good.
Oh, so good. So we try to have the same weight in both the receiving and the giving portion when it does come to gifts, both receiving and giving. And she, our kids are young, but I think it'll click hopefully one day.
It does. Absolutely. Model the modeling is I think what does it, right? Like, do as I do, not what I say is essentially what winds up happening, even though sometimes we find ourselves saying, do as I say and not as I do.
Yeah.
But I think, kind of looping back, because I think a lot of our listeners, I'm just thinking of the whole shift from clinical medicine and the mindset and the burnout and all of that. So much of it actually parallels what it is that we're saying here. Mm-hmm. In that, like, the idea of giving, right? Giving, whether that's to yourself, the space or the time or, whatever it may be, to figure out like, what is the next right step? I think that's, at least for me, that was what was helpful when I was experiencing burnout. It was behind the decision. When I left medicine and I was done. I don't want to go back. Yeah. But that's just me. Right. And that doesn't, I just think that was what was so helpful, was just giving myself that space so that then I could turn around and give to others better without the guilt of like, well, I should have been there, but instead I was working or yelling at you instead of just supporting you,
Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. Again, I'm going to go back to whether it's societal or cultural, but the ability for ourselves to give back to ourselves without guilt, judgment free, is difficult, and it was not taught to me. And so going into medicine, which is a line of service, and it's again ingrained that we have to give ourselves indefinitely. We have to sacrifice a part of our physical and mental well being for patient care.
Yeah.
When that bled into post training, again, I think back and I'm like, what was I doing? I wish someone told me back in college and med school where it's okay to chill for a
Yeah.
little bit because gosh, it's going to refuel you to move to that next step, whether it's within the same field or outside, within your family or outside.
Yeah. In your decision to move away from clinical medicine, whether temporarily or otherwise, did being a mom play a significant role?
You know, no. However, now that I've been out of clinic for a number of weeks now, I've never been the type of mom where I would be, within the carpool and pick up and drop off. I was working. And
Yeah.
so now being a part of that and just kind of dipping my toe in it's I'm just so grateful that I'm able to physically be there for my daughter just a tad more now that school
Yeah.
started, or even get to know my daughter's friends
Mm.
personally. Yes, we've all gotten together for play dates where the parents are here and the kids are here. Or, we temporarily go to a birthday party where, again, we're separated. I just had 9 girls over for a sleepover slumber party.
I
And let me
saw.
tell
I
you, that
saw.
was the most intimate way to get to know your
Yeah.
kids' friends. But it was beautiful. I loved seeing their little brains and how they interact and just them be. And I don't think I would have been able to have the bandwidth to do that if I
Yeah.
didn't take a step back and take a small
Mhm.
break. So no, it
Yeah.
wasn't a confirming factor, but a determining factor. But right now I'm just kind of self-reflecting and I'm really, really enjoying it. It's not
Yeah.
something I anticipated.
So good. So good. And I see a lot of South Asian professional women struggle with this. And this question maybe is for both of you.
Mm.
Who gives you permission to ask for what you want as a South Asian working mother?
I think this is a little bit of a nuanced question because the person that's going to answer this the way I would answer it now authentically versus how I would have answered it 5 years ago. Flo, I don't
Yeah.
know if you would agree with that, right? Like, I would say for me now, I do. I give
Yeah.
myself permission.
How did you get
Uh,
there? How did you get there? Because I feel a lot of people, a lot of South Asian women that are working have some resistance to asking for what they want. And I mean them like
Mhm.
individually,
mm-hmm.
and um, think that the right, quote unquote, there's no right or wrong, right? The quote unquote right thing is to continuously pour in everyone else's cup. And somehow it's wrong to ask for what you want.
Well, we saw our moms do that, right? Flo,
Yeah.
I'm curious to
Absolutely.
know what you're thinking.
100%. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and probably one of the most difficult jobs in the world, something that I know I probably can't do happily. She ran the household, took care of the three of us, supported us in every which way. I still to this day cannot remember a time where she's just like, hold on, I need to reset. And I'm sure she absolutely needed those moments, but
Right.
our upbringing never taught us to do that. And I have a very similar answer to you, Seema. I give myself permission. 5 to 7 years ago, I probably would have asked my parents, my siblings, my husband, my friend. I needed that confirmation from everybody else to make a scary decision where ego and pride may be also playing a role.
Yeah.
And this is my sole purpose of starting my coaching business and doing everything that I'm doing right now. I want to make sure other people, other working women, other South Asian working moms know that they have the ability, they have the strength, that they have the purpose make these decisions. And it's not easy. It's
Mhm.
not without pros and cons, but gosh, it's so freeing once you let go of all the noise around you and you have people who support and encourage you. Once you
Mhm.
start surrounding yourself from that with that, you don't need anyone else's permission. You have the
Mhm.
confidence to do it yourself. And a lot of friends and clients that I see still don't have that confidence to do it themselves or to make that major decision, whatever
Mhm.
it may be.
I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of fear of like, if I
Absolutely.
take this and you've labeled it as a misstep, either because you're not sure what to do next now that you've made this decision, or somebody's not happy about it, right? Whether
Mm,
it's your husband or your other family or, whatever. I happened to take a walk this morning, and I was walking with a neighbor that I don't know, but I just started a conversation with her, and we were talking about how a lot of this thinking is, it feels like you're the one that's doing it wrong because it's
mhm,
upstream, right? Like the
mhm,
idea that you can develop the confidence that there isn't a misstep, that you're not wrong. All of those things are so contradictory to the flow of how we as society are taught, whether we're South
mhm.
Asian or not, right?
Correct.
We're taught work hard. And then for us as South Asians, do as your husband says.
Yes.
I used to think, when I like disagreed with Manish, that he thought I was stupid, that I couldn't make these decisions for myself. There was a lot of, it is not easy, but it is simple. And I will say
Mhm.
though, the challenge, um, it just felt like it takes time, right? It takes time to learn how to do it. But you know, you get what you put in that sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I want you guys to talk to the dads or the men out there, right? Not only for their spouses, the females in their life, but also their daughters. What can you teach us and teach me? If you can't teach, it's hard to talk to a lot of people. Teach me. What can I do to until the woman in my life gets to the place where she has the confidence, either through coaching or working with one of you or being inspired, to ask for what she wants and not feel that it's wrong? What can I do to further her on that journey or make space for it? Um, because, you know, the reality is, I think we live in a time where it's busy when you have small kids, and sometimes you're so caught up in what's going on in the here and now that it's easy to forget that I'm asking for what I want. I want to go to the gym, or I want to go on this trip. I'm going to ask for it. But I'm not necessarily stopping and thinking like, "Hey, is she asking for what she wants, or is she not?" Right? How can I support the woman in my life? And frankly, it's a really selfish question. How can I support my daughter in developing that, to be able to ask for what she needs first, but also wants, right?
Such a
I
powerful
think
question.
it really is, and thank you for asking that, because I think a lot of the times there is a lot of fear behind that question and that need. Um, Obviously, everyone's needs are different, but just in general, I think our communication styles absolutely need to be acknowledged. How do we receive feedback? How do we receive love? How do we receive support? It differs from person to person. I made Sanjay take, and I also took that love language test like 20 times because it constantly changes. My love language is all of the above, just FYI. It's really complicated. But anyway, but now that we know how we each receive love and support and criticism, it's much easier for us to communicate to each other without judgment. And the second thing was just completely removing assumption. If something is not said,
Mhm.
there should be no assumption behind the unsaid word. And so creating a safe space where um, someone can take the time and effort to say what they need without the judgment, without the assumption, without the guilt. And as we mentioned before, practice and consistency will help with the progress. I think that's so important. Having an 8-year-old, a preteen who's all in her emotions. She's a true Leo, heart of hearts. I'm also teaching my husband to not take the emotion at face value from someone who may not have the development to express and connect that with verbiage. And so giving her the space to say, I see you are upset. Can you tell me in words so I understand, what are you feeling? Instead of
So
you're
good.
upset, you're angry, like instead of labeling and assuming. She might be upset because she's tired. She might be upset because
Yeah.
she's hungry. She may be upset because we said or did something that hurt her feelings, right? There's so much, there's so many meanings and so many complicated meanings behind the emotion. I think the same goes for adults as well. Sometimes we just haven't practiced, or we're not used to verbalizing and acknowledging and identifying with words and communicating those feelings. So I think that has been such a game changer between at least me and my husband.
Right. Do your families and your spouses and your kids get a better or worse version of you when you make space for putting yourself first sometimes and taking what you want or need?
Most of the time, it's the better version of me. I
Yeah.
do have to be, and I'm working on this, I do have to be very cognizant about when to turn the noise off. So I'm constantly thinking, okay, I have to do this next. I have to build this next. I have to email this person next. And again, that's where Gia's like, hold on, what are you thinking about? And she immediately recognizes when I'm not 100% there. I am definitely more conscious of that now that my daughter has called me out multiple times.
So good. So
Yeah.
good.
I was thinking we all have daughters. All three of us have daughters. And Flo and I have, Monty just turned 9 yesterday. So she sounds like she's
Happy
just,
birthday.
yes,
Happy belated.
Yes, she's my baby.
Yeah.
But that's 9. But I'm thinking about just all of these things, and I have to agree. I think what started shifting for me personally was how I communicated with myself, but then also how are we as a family communicating with each other?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot I can't possibly, I echo everything you said, Flo, but I can't possibly get it all in one podcast episode.
Yeah.
But I think that for all of us, whether you have children or you don't have children, whether they identify as male or female or somewhere in between, regardless, a lot of power lies in creating awareness around how it is that you're speaking to yourself.
Yeah.
By default, I think we all speak from scarcity, right? I haven't done this. I have not. I need to do this. You wake up and you're like, I should have gotten up 10 minutes ago. It's so insidious, right? It sneaks up on you. The scarcity mindset of like, you're not doing enough. You're not being enough. You don't have enough. I can't be happy until I obtain X, Y, Z. I'll give you an example of how sneaky it is. So my son just started middle school, and both of the kids walk to school, but the middle school's a little bit further. So Manish and I have been walking him just till he gets familiar with the route. And it's about a 2-mile walk there and back. Just until, he's going to ride his bike. But anyway, so we were walking him, and then something happened. I didn't get on the yoga mat. And then yesterday I didn't do anything at all. He went by himself. And I told Manish, I was like, well, I haven't done anything for 2 days. And he goes, what are you talking about? And he goes, didn't you take like a 2-mile walk in the heat? It's like 1,000 degrees in Texas.
Wow.
And I just looked at him and I was like, well, yeah, but I didn't get on my yoga mat. And he goes, but didn't you take a walk? And it was a quick walk. It wasn't like a Sunday stroll. And I just looked at him and I was like, oh my gosh, I absolutely did. It's the idea that we aren't doing enough, even to the listeners. We are all coaches on here, and we've gotten to where we've gotten, and we will continue to move forward because we continue to value mindset. But what that means is, for me at least, how are you speaking to yourself? What stories and assumptions are you allowing yourself to operate on that's then creating this reality of you're not doing enough or you can't be happy until? What do you guys think?
Oh, I totally agree. And one of the practice tips I picked up from another coach at a conference recently is to keep a baby picture of yourself at your desk or on your phone.
Mhm.
And then, when you catch yourself sort of saying, I haven't done anything today, like, say it to that picture. I know it sounds woo
Mhm.
woo and metaphysical and out there, but it's something I do. And I catch myself, and then it quickly helps me realize that I would never say that to my child, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
In whatever and it's not even like it has to be something negative. It's just that if it's just not encouraging, right?
Mhm.
Or like,
Yeah.
you know what, it's never going to work, or something like
Ugh.
that. And that's something that many times we make a decision, that's not going to work, let's not try it, right? And what would we say to our kids? Would we ever dare
Mhm.
say to our kids, like, you're never going to be a great soccer player. So, like, do you really want to buy these cleats? Like, you'll wear them and then they'll get dirty. You'll throw them away, and then they'll be old cleats. Like, why? Why? Right?
Mhm.
And I found, as woo and metaphysical and airy fairy that sounds, it works. Like, you catch yourself, and over time,
Mhm.
you build that muscle, and you're like, no, no, that's less than optimal. I'm not going to say
Mhm.
that to myself anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree. We get taught in school how to speak to others with respect and with tact. We have, in medical school, we have this bedside manner course that we take, but we are never ever taught how to speak kindly to ourselves. So that inner voice just builds. An
Mm.
exercise that I do with myself and my clients, I have them name their negative voice,
Hmm.
and mine is Evilla. I know it's really like,
Oh, that's funny.
um, but it just separates it, right? It
Yeah.
allows us to not identify with our Evilla
Right.
voice. Like, we are not the same. It's just an outside voice that's trying to bring you down. Like, what affirmations can you do? What exercises can you do to battle that negative inner voice? Like, no, you didn't get on your yoga mat, but Evila, I got a 2 mile brisk walk in. I spent time with my children.
Right.
There's so many things that we do instead of. It shouldn't negate it, right? It should just add on
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Mine
Yeah.
is Baby Fear because I couldn't come up with a good name. And I was like, you
That
know
is the
what?
best.
It's Baby Fear.
I love
To
it.
the
I
point,
love it.
my kids also have theirs named. Their guards
Yeah,
are named. Arjun's is Mean Dude, and
I
Okay.
love it.
Mansi's is Pickles. 'Cause-
Oh my gosh. Those are like
Uh,
really sweet names though.
yeah.
yes, but going
Pickles.
That's,
back, Dinesh, to your question, I know she's just so cute. Dinesh, going back to your question, like I asked Manish the same thing. Like, what is the name? Like, what can we name your guard? And
yeah.
he's just like, I don't know. But like in response to asking for the other dads, the other males, like really take time to sort of participate in these family things that seem woo woo.
Yeah.
Just do it, because you know what? Like, it's been a game changer for us. Even though he can't name his guard, he knows it's there and that it's not him.
Right.
Let's
Agreed.
let's make up a name for him. Then we'll turn to the IG questions. What
Oh
should we
yes.
name Manish's guard?
What should we name it? He's
Um.
because he's really, really hyper rational
Yeah.
and a stickler, perfectionist. Because that's not anybody else that's South Asian and
I know, right?
Hyper rational and a stickler.
I'm
For
like,
some
I was gonna
reason,
say sticky, but
sticky,
sticky buns. We'll call him
sticky
sticky
bun,
buns.
sticky bun.
Maybe he'll
Oh,
reach out and let us know if he
I
likes
would
sticky
love to,
buns.
exactly. I would love to know that feedback actually.
Yeah.
I
What
think
does he
the
think is
kids
sticky?
would really love that. I don't know. I'll have to. Now, Manish, you have to listen to this episode and tell us what you think.
I can't wait till he's in the ICU and something pops into his head and he goes, "Shut up, sticky buns." And then the patient goes, "What?"
You know who's going to say that though is
Yeah.
Soumya is going to
Yeah.
listen to this episode, and then she's
Yes.
going to go and tell the
Soumya,
nurses.
let us know if you approve of sticky buns. I think it'll be the final vote.
So good.
Anyways, so we got a couple of questions. I'll pick three randomly from IG, and I don't know if you want to tell us who said this or not. Well, maybe we'll keep them anonymous. Dr. Flora Sinha, how do you do so much?
Oh, with help. I don't do it all.
Yeah.
I am very good at delegating, and I'm very good at recognizing what does not bring me joy. For example, laundry, hate it, can't
Mm-hmm.
stand it. I have help with someone that folds my laundry, and it sounds so bougie, but
Yeah.
the 45 minutes where it takes me, and let me just be clear, we are teaching my daughter how to do her own tasks. We do not have someone doing and folding her laundry, but just in general, these little things, using Instacart. I just put in an Instacart order before I signed on with you guys for a Costco
Yeah.
delivery because I just don't have time right now to spend in the crazy Costco crowd. Really delegating tasks and asking for help is such a sign of strength that,
Okay,
yeah.
so I have to jump in there, Flo. Can I challenge what
Yeah.
you said just a little bit?
Please.
Because I love how you said, for the listeners, we had one listener ask, like, what is coaching? What does that look like? And here's just a little sampling
Yes.
of what that means. You just said, I don't have time for that.
I recognize that.
Tell me why, tell the listeners,
Yes.
yes.
Let me break down the statement, I don't have time. When I refer to I don't have time, I usually refer to the point that I don't want to prioritize that. That's not on my priority list. I have prioritized other things instead of, tidying every day, instead of taking my daughter to her mathnesium class and sitting there for an hour where I'm not even involved. I have outsourced a number of grocery shopping does not bring me any joy. So I have outsourced that to Instacart, the wonderful, beautiful people helping me out with that. So when I know something needs to be prioritized over, granted, we all need food, right? We all need laundry done. We all need a certain baseline things that may or may not be fun. It's important to know what can be outsourced. And I always say that it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be done, right? We don't need the perfectly beautiful dinner where it looks beautiful. It has all the colors. It just needs to be done. So if you're going to do a nutritious meal that's kind of a dump on the tray, roast everything and put it on someone's plate, that is okay. I'm just not prioritizing chopping my onions and my bell peppers and all this stuff.
Love it.
So that's what I wanted to make sure I clear up. So thanks for that, Seema.
I love it. We're going to be best friends. I'm a big fan of outsourcing anything that you don't want to do, right? And anything that based on sort of a pure financial metric is an arbitrage, right? Where your time can be spent doing a higher value, right? I mean, it comes from a book called Essentialism, that you limit your your effort to the places where you can make the highest levels of contributions. And sometimes, like you said, taking your kid grocery shopping or something is a high level of contribution. It's not the task of grocery shopping. It's a task of teaching them how to be self-sufficient when they go to college or something like that. So I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I just wanted to point that out because I, myself included, if I'm not careful, this is what I'm talking about when I say how do you communicate with yourself? When I say things to myself like, I don't have time for that.
Yes.
It's so different than I'm choosing not to do that.
Yes.
And I knew that's what you were saying and that's what you meant. I was assuming, but I based on what I know about you, I assumed as much. But just for the listeners to see how powerful that shift can be between I don't have time versus I'm choosing to delegate and I've given myself permission to allow that delegation without it diminishing my own worth or value.
So good. All right. I think we dealt with the other question already. How did you decide to take a break? So unless there's anything else to add there, I can skip over. We'll do one more, then we'll get into wrap up. How do you deal with imposter syndrome?
Ooh. So for me, when I know my imposter syndrome is creeping up, I delve into education. So the more I prepare, the more I educate myself, the more my confidence grows, and the more I can bring to a table, whatever table that may be, whether I'm the only person on there or I'm on with two wonderful coaches, right?
Yeah.
So really just preparation helps a lot. And I talk to my Ivula voice a lot when my imposter syndrome creeps up. I have a lot of self-affirmations, reactive affirmations that I will use to combat those negative voices, saying I'm not good enough.
Love it. Love it.
Love that. I love that. I actually did have a question circling way back to the beginning of the conversation, because I think it's important for the listeners who maybe they're just starting out on their mindset journey. They've not been coached before, or, anything of that nature, because we're supposed to know all the answers ourselves, right? You said, when we were talking about burnout, you gave at least me the impression that you had sort of already been there once before, right? And so now the second time around, or however many times around this has been for you, I had the tools to recognize that it was time for me to reevaluate, right? So for listeners who are a few steps behind all of where we are, what made you decide, or what helped you decide, you know what, I need to find places to get these tools myself? Like, what happened there?
I started delving into meditation quite some time ago. Now, there's the traditional meditation, right, where there's breathing exercises, there's guided meditation, but my sort of meditative state is self-reflection. So whether I'm driving or whether I have 5 minutes, I literally will be like, okay, head to toe, what are you feeling, Flora? Do you have a headache? Like physical symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I say my physical symptoms, I'll go into, okay, well, let's delve into why. Did you not get enough sleep last night? Did the dog wake up randomly and you need to let out to go to the bathroom? You had interrupted. Were you stressed? Is there some change going on? After I started doing that, I started recognizing I'm unhappy, not with everything I've been blessed with. I'm unhappy with this very specific aspect of my life. This is what's carrying over the rest of my day, and something that I'm actually very good at compartmentalizing. I'm unable to compartmentalize for some reason. And instead of pushing through, let me reevaluate. And that's when I went through the different options. Is it, the help? Is it my support? Is it my bandwidth? Is it my load, my workload? Is it the company itself? And I just started just very logistically going through potential triggers, where then I ran out of options, and I went to the scariest thought, like, oh my God, is this time to kind of shift phases? And it doesn't have to be all or nothing too. I also want to make this practical, that no, I didn't quit my job. Like I obviously need income. And so if you're in the spot where you're able to do that, wonderful. I'm not. And so it's okay to be practical about it and say, okay, I'm going to be sticking to this while I actually get finances to help support a bigger purpose, a bigger idea that I am now slowly shifting to. It doesn't have to be black and white. You can do both. It's
So
just, shifting that mindset over a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. So good. So we like to wrap up with a couple of questions, and then we'll invite you to tell us about where our audience can find you and all that stuff. So one of the questions I thought about specifically for you is that Gia comes to you and says, Mom, I want to be a success. What would you say?
This is actually a very recent conversation that we had. She asked, what is it like to have a lot of money? Which I thought was a really interesting question. And I'm like, it means nothing, actually. And so success in general to me is contentment. Really, I think once we acknowledge and know our present and have the tools and techniques for what's up here in our brains, we can then move forward in any obstacle, any challenge, whether it be how to find a job, to how to switch jobs, to how to overcome imposter syndrome. But without fixing things in your mindset, it's really tough to reach contentment, which then for me is success.
So good. So good. You up for one more wrap up question like that?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So when we started the podcast, we thought Seema and I would do some episodes, we would do some solo episodes, and we would do guest episodes, right? And so we have no idea who our next guest is, not lined up, not scheduled. So would you give us a question you would leave for the next guest to answer on the show?
Oh, let's see.
Not knowing who the guest is, ask them a question, and we'll ask them that question when they come on. And we'll start this little tradition of asking forward.
What is the worst piece of advice anyone has ever given you?
Boom.
I
I
love
love
it.
it.
I love it. Flora, so
I'm
good to have you.
curious.
Tell us where people can find you, if they want to work with you, or what's coming up for you. What are you excited about? Tell us everything.
Yeah, so I am taking the time to build a lot of this. So you can right now primarily find me on Instagram at Dr. Flora Sinha. I am currently website building and currently also working on some courses that those who are not quite ready for one-on-one coaching can purchase and do a little bit of independent learning. And then next year, fingers crossed, I will be also starting a podcast, and y'all are both on my guest list. So I cannot wait to see where this goes. I'm so excited that I got a chance to chat with you guys.
We're excited for you. That's
Yeah.
so amazing. We're so proud of everything that that comes on your page. For those of you who don't follow Flo on Instagram, her content is it's just so authentic, as Dinesh said. But what I love, I resonate because I'm an only child. And so
Oh, I did not know that.
yeah, I'm an only child, and so a lot of what you post is deeply meaningful for me. But it all is about setting boundaries and
Mhm.
putting down expectations of other people, putting down expectations of yourself, navigating all of these various aspects. How to have difficult conversations about, I know around Thanksgiving and stuff, you do like,
Yes.
okay, you're going to have the conversation with your family member about why you're not pregnant again, or
Yes.
why you quote unquote just have one kid, or
Mhm.
why you walked away from medicine or whatever. So great content.
Thank
Listeners, if you
you.
don't follow her, please go ahead, hop on, follow her. You will not be disappointed.
I appreciate it. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks so much, Flora. We loved having you.